Yeah, for us it's an honor to be here, and also we also would like to congratulate the school for the great lineup that they have put together for this semester. And for us, it's also very impressive to be part of these posters with the Zuka architect, with Petho, Enrichhausen, and so on. Since most of the lectures are given by architects that actually are not part of the faculty, I think it's especially interesting for the students this lecture, because you will also get to see what we're doing, and also you'll be able to corroborate what is taught in the classes. Well, as Mark was explaining, we have been teaching at the AAU for 4 years, the three of us, Jaime, José Ramón, and myself. And somehow, given the circumstances, the circumstances somehow have led us to be transient, and somehow has given us opportunities to continue learning from a global environment. So we have had academic and professional experiences in different continents, and also which has allowed us to expand our view and enable us to establish a wide network. So when we start looking at where we can potentially do a project, our field of action, it doesn't really get reduced to Spain or Europe. It's much wider. And so in a way, for us, any location can be a great opportunity. And in that sense, context is not a constraint, but actually it can be an opportunity. So that's why we have projects all over the world. We have collaborators in all the continents, and we also teach in several countries. These somehow opportunities have led us to understand our practice as a conglomerate of many things, many activities. So we have a wider view of how we understand our practice. So we do teaching, design, we do research, we organize exhibition, and so on. So we have these three main axes, like design, research, and teaching. And we believe that the three of them are very important, and also they intersect and they enrich one to another. Well, teaching, of course, as I was mentioning, we, and Mark also was explaining, we do teach at the AAU, but also we have been teaching in Europe, we have been teaching in South America, in Chile, and also in the East Coast, in Boston. And for us, teaching is very important because the conversations that we have with the students somehow enrich our practice, and we do learn a lot from the interaction that we have with them. In some cases, we actually believe that we learn more from them than actually they learn from us. Then we do research. We have done some research about temporary urbanism that has led to the design of certain pavilions, like this pavilion that we designed 2 years ago at the Venice Biennale, or several publications. We did other research about public spaces that were part of the Chilean Biennale last year, and we somehow believe that all these topics that are part of our research also become part of our daily design challenges. So when every time we have a design conversation about a competition or every particular project, those topics come back to our conversations. So yeah, now I'm gonna jump on the third one, which is design, and that's how I wanna spend most of the time explaining about design. I'm gonna be running through 4 particular projects that we have developed in the office in the last few years, and all the projects have something in common. One of them is that all of them are competitions. So basically, we have been able to access those projects through a system of competitions that we see is a very interesting system that happens. It happens mainly in Europe, and it somehow allows and enriches the profession. So for us, it's very, like, those competitions are very interesting because it allows us to somehow it serves as a platform to develop speculative and conceptual ideas, and at the same time, it sets up a very interesting leverage for us. So after winning a competition, somehow the proposal that we won is set up on top of the table as a platform to establish a conversation with the client. There's another element that we believe all our projects have in common, which is how they all tried somehow to reclaim public space, which we believe is somehow crucial to the contemporary culture. So there's, as you know, there is a rich history in Western culture of how the places of interaction between people, spaces of engagement have been evolving, but they always have been a very strong presence. So from the Greek agora actually means gathering, so in which you had the political, economic, and social center of the Greek polis in the middle, which is this like a space, interstitial space between all the elements, all the different programs. So from the Greek agora to the Roman forum, where the religious and civic activities blend, and where you have temples, basilicas, shops, markets. Also, the medieval market space, in which the main activity of the city, trading, would happen, to the Renaissance Plaza or the Baroque Square, where this, as you can see in the in Piazza San Marco, the arcades define the boundaries of this space. To somehow, if we keep moving forward, we'll go to the 60s or 70s, in which the public space had a very strong political connotation, giving certain demonstrations, and that kind of led to the conversations of the right to the city. However, nowadays, somehow we believe that the contemporary public space is somehow under threat. There's certain reduction of use of public spaces, given the pressure from the capital and privatization, and also given the development of technology. So somehow we believe that the public spaces are being reduced, and there is somehow a disconnection between the public space and the user. And that's one of the reasons where we're placing these two images here on the presentation. So even though most of our projects, all our projects don't have our specific solution to specific problems. We don't have one specific strategy that we apply to the rest of all our projects. There's something that they have in common, and they all try to reclaim public spaces given the constraints. Given the constraints. So we're putting these two images on top of the table because they're very inspiring for us, and they reclaim public space in a very complex context. These abandoned plots. So from the playgrounds to Aldo Banèc that you have on the right, to the playgrounds or public spaces from Francesc Català Roca. So I'm gonna explain 4 projects. As I said, competitions that we have done in the last few years. The first one is called Rethinking Somes. Somes is the name of a river, and is the main river that crosses the city of Cluj-Napoca in Romania. Somehow, as all the projects, when we started the competition, they all have this global component. The project is in Eastern Europe, in Romania. Then part of the team was spread out. So when we're working on this competition, Jaime was in Seville, José Ramón was in Madrid. I was in Chile with part of the team, and also we have some collaborators in Hong Kong. So like all of the projects, they all have this kind of global component. This is where the project was based, in Romania, in Eastern Europe. Where you have the dot, that's Cluj-Napoca, which is the capital of the western part of Romania, called Transylvania. This city is quite interesting, and it keeps surprising us in many ways. It's the second largest city in Romania. It has close to 300,000 inhabitants, and it was part of the Roman Empire, and that was when the city center was created. So the competition, basically, the call for the competition was to rethink the relationship between the river and the city. As you can see, this is the river as it crosses entire city throughout its 15 kilometers, and it goes through many diverse conditions. So it passes by the city center. It goes through some industrial areas, as you can see here on the right. It gets involved in more rural areas, and then it also crosses through some residential areas that were built during the communist period back in the 60s and 70s. So as I said, the competition was about how you could rethink the relationship between the city and the river, which was quite conflicted. And to that point that the city didn't really take advantage of that asset, but actually was giving the back to it. So this conflictive relationship didn't allow for any kind of use or any kind of program that could foster that relationship. And basically, over the last 40, 60 years, the river has been understood as a hard infrastructure. You have these metal wires that you can see here throughout the 15 kilometers that talk about this infrastructure nature. And then the river also, over the last few decades, has been domesticated through this system of containing walls that set up a strong barrier between the city and the river, and at the same time drastic high differences. So in some cases, due to these walls, the residents are not even conscious of the system of the river. So basically, over the last 50 years, the river has been understood as this duct, which main goal is just to transport energy, water or electricity. So basically, this was the main challenge of the project, to say, okay, how we can reformulate or reimagine the infrastructure in order to turn it into a public space. This is the proposal throughout its 15 kilometers. Basically, one of the main ambitions that we have was to turn this river into the main connector of public spaces, as opposed to understand the river as one line that divides the city into two parts, understanding the river as a wide band that had the capacity to include public spaces, green spaces, and also different ecological environments. So basically, the project was this system of public spaces that were connected, that also included a network of bike and pedestrians path. This is one part of it. As you can see, this is, for instance, a stadium, just for you to get a sense of the scale of the project. And basically, the whole project is all these public and green spaces next to the river. And the width of the project also varies. It goes from, in some areas, it's only 20, 30 meters. And then as it incorporates new public spaces and green spaces, it gets wider and wider, and it goes up to 150 meters. So yeah, as I was mentioning, that the river is this element that it has the capacity to establish a connection and links a system of public spaces within the city, as opposed to being a barrier. Then other main goal of the proposal was to somehow bridge that gap between the city and the river by kind of reformulating the edge of the river. So in some cases we included the beaches. In some cases we had the system of path. We made the river accessible in order to bridge that gap. And one of the, let's say, the third main goal of the project was to renaturalize the river. As I was explaining before, the river has been domesticated by this system of concrete walls. So this project aims to kind of allow the nature to reconquer the edges of the river, and also reconstruct and recover many of the existing islands. So even though the relationship between the city and the river is quite conflictive, there are some specific points in which the residents do take advantage of that asset. So the goal of the project is to serve as some kind of platform for the residents to be able to do this kind of activity throughout the 15 kilometers and not in one specific spot. So in order to achieve all these goals, somehow the renaturalization of the river, bridging the gap between the river and the city, and then also understanding the river as this urban connector of public spaces, we had a system of strategies that were applied into the project. Strategies that somehow were different from each other and trying to be as more site-specific as possible. Like the entire project throughout its 15 kilometers had some kind of gradient of hardness. So as you get farther away from the city center, the project will get more natural and the vegetation will be able to take over more and more. So this was one of the strategies that we implemented called Okay, super. So yeah, I was mentioning that in order to achieve this goal, we had a system of strategies that we're implementing. This one is called soft terraces. So basically, we propose a system of kind of redefine the kind of hard edge by proposing a system of soft terraces that will allow the project and the river to permeate into the city fabric. So in these cases, the section of the river is widened. And the existing hard edge is transformed in a more soft and natural environment that is able to include local vegetation, rocks, sands, and so on. So this system of terraces allows the river to become more accessible and incorporates areas for recreation where diverse range of activities could also take place. In other areas closer to the city center, the hard edge was modified by a system of hard terraces or so-called bleachers that had the capacity to transform this edge into a public space to contemplate the water, as you can see on the left. So as I was mentioning, the width of the project will change throughout its 15 kilometers, and it will be encountering system of public spaces or squares. So we design all of them with the idea to be as versatile as possible in order to allow the residents to reimagine ways in which those spaces can potentially be used, from an ice ring arena to concerts to markets and so on. So somehow the project aimed to serve as a platform for the residents to propose, to participate and modify those system of public spaces. And then the last strategy, soft infrastructure, is a system of long diagonal path that had the main goal of stitching the river with immediate context. So those paths will extend the existing urban fabric into the water, establishing a more visual and physical connection between the city and the river. One of the main features of this, let's say, 4-layer is the temporal character of it. So the project, in order to embrace the temporal nature of the city, it also proposes different categories in terms of time, so that some part of the project are more heavy and more permanent, while other are more temporal. So in this case, this system of platform, this system of paths were conceived as temporal in order to allow the design itself to be more malleable, and to mutate in order to give answer to the futures of the city. I mean, this is a very large project. It'll take many times to get built. So we thought it was interesting to propose in some cases, a more malleable proposal to be able to give answers to the unknown questions that the city will have in the future. As I was saying, this project is being developed. Now we're working on the construction drawings, and hopefully the next time we see each other, we'll have the chance to show some construction images. Well, the next project that I'm going to explain is the Green City Block. This is an international competition in Malaga that we won last year, and it's also currently under development. And in this case, we did it with Daroc Arquitectos. There are some architects in the south of Spain with whom we always have a very fruitful collaboration. As many of the projects, the site itself was in Malaga, which is one of the spots that you see in Spain. Then the team was somehow spread out within Spain. Some of us were in Chile too, and others were helping from the north of Italy. So basically, the competition call it was to design one chunk of a city in Malaga, and consisted somehow in rethinking the Mediterranean contemporary city from many different scales, from the dwelling, from the public spaces, from the mobility, and so on. So somehow our proposal, which is called Al Sur, which means to the south, it proposes a development of a topology of housing and public spaces, trying to maximize the passive energy strategies. So we propose a new model of urbanization, maximizing as well the pedestrians and the ecological component, trying to make this green block an example for the 21st century intervention. We work with references, as you do. This particular one is from a book that you probably all know, which is Architecture Without Architects by Bernard Rudolsky, which is a strong inspiration for us. As you will see, as I further explain the project later on, you will see how we try to incorporate the vernacular architecture in order to develop passive strategies of energy saving. And as I was mentioning, this book is always a reference for us, and is always on top of the table. This project has many scales, and I will explain them from the micro to the micro. I'll first explain the block strategies, then I'll jump into the dwelling strategies, and then I'll explain the details. So this is our proposal, in which the traffic and private vehicles inside the block is restricted, in order to somehow propose a new model of pedestrian city, in which most of the space will be only accessible for bikes and pedestrians. All the parking, the reduced somehow parking that we propose, is located underground in order to provide pedestrians and bike-friendly environment. The volumes, which are the wide areas that you see in here, are organized in such a way that they try to optimize the solar impact on the interstitial public spaces. So the whole plot, let's say, is covered by this green public space with some, and includes certain playgrounds and sport areas, and then it's also designed by a complex network of pedestrians and bike areas. If we move to the building strategies, we can see how all the dwellings occupy the width of the floor plan, so all of them allow for cross ventilation. So what it means that all the dwellings somehow has two facades. And then, as I was explaining before, there's a system of somehow solar chimneys that also somehow define the geometry and the shape of the buildings. So all the towers are topped off with the glass roof that when the sun hits, a air chamber that is connected to the core, it gets somehow warm. So in the summer, the suction effect favors the natural ventilation, while in the winter the roof is closed, and then this whole chamber it turns into a reservoir of hot air. If we move into the dwelling strategies, and we also propose different type of dwellings, 7, as you can see here, that were partially given by the requirements of the competition, by the brief, given by the number of square meters, number of rooms, and so on. And we proposed these different dwellings that some of them were on one level, some of them were in 2 levels, but all of them had the capacity to face both facades. All the dwellings were proposed as industrialized construction with prefabricated panels of laminated timber, and all of them had a complex system of sun protection throughout some wooden laminated screens. So in the south, the project in the summer it has a system of layers. Somehow the screens that I was mentioning, the glass, the terrace, and so on, that it protects the building from the heat. And in the south, in the north, it has a very thick wall with some closet inside that allows it to also somehow allow the houses to be independent thermal function. So also if we keep talking about these thermal strategies, in the winter the screen is open and the glass is closed, so the sun hits the interior of the building and somehow creates some kind of greenhouse effect. And at the same time we have this L-shaped wall made out of concrete that has a lot of thermal mass that collects the heat during the day and then it releases the heat during the night. As you can see here in these images, this is somehow the system of layers that compose the south facade. Well, the next project that I'm going to explain is the most recent one. It's a competition that we did only a few months ago in Paseo de la Castellana. That's one street in Madrid, the main street in Madrid that we also did in collaboration with La Roca Arquitectos. As every project had its global component, and this project, as I was saying, it was in the main artery of Madrid. This is the city of Madrid. This is the Castellana Street, where you have the main train station. In the north, the stadium by the Real Madrid that many of you might know, the main park, El Retiro, and then in this area you have all the main museums such as Reina Sofía, Thyssen, Prado, and so on. So this is actually the location of this project, which is actually only like a few minutes walk from our current office in Madrid. So an insurance company bought this building that you can see here that has around 8,000 square meters, which is 80,000 square feet. That was built at the beginning of the 20th century, and they proposed a competition that was focused on the preservation and restoration of some listed elements of the project, as well as the design of a new interior office and within a programmatic and environmental point of view. So basically, there were certain requirements in which the whole facade has to be kept, also the main stairs and the lobby, and then the interior was expected to be demolished and also a few with 4 parking floors that had to be built underneath, and also the whole buildable area had to be increased by 20%. This is one of the projects with the most constraints that we have been working with, given the parts that have to be conserved. It's also very interesting typology of project that is very common right now in Madrid and Spain, as opposed to, like, there's so much that has been built in Spain in the last 10-15 years that now there's not much to get built, and many buildings are actually empty. So many cities are supposed to somehow grow outwards and build new developments. The city now is looking inwards. So there are many projects like this in which the structures have to be recycled, and there's this competition and all this challenge of how you can give life to these given structures. So this is our proposal that aim to somehow also reclaim some kind of a space of interaction and relationship for the employees. The main program of the project given by the brief was offices, but we trying to design the offices, which is these 2 areas that you can see in the most optimized way, in order to leave some room and space for spaces of interaction between the employees, which is this section that we call the I, because both the ground floor and the upper floor are those spaces in which you have the lobby, you have the entrance, you have the terrace, and that are all of them connected by this main atrium. If we go through the project from the ground floor up, you can see how on the ground floor we aim to recover the main entrance at the Castellana and somehow build some kind of sequence of threshold of filters before entering the building. So you have the existing lobby. From there you go to a larger lobby, and then from there you can access the main patio, or go to the auditorium, or take the stairs, or take the elevators that will lead you up. As I said, the elements that we have to maintain were the facade, the lobby, and the stairs. On the left, you can see both the lobby and the stairs that were part of this sequence and this sequence of spaces. So in this case, yeah, of course, we maintain the stairs, and we build on top of it in order to allow them to access the upper levels. As I was mentioning, the patio is this kind of main feature of the project. We decided to design only one central corridor, as opposed to the 3 uneven corridors that already exist in the current development of the project. We understood these corridors as this kind of corridor patio as the main programmatic configuration of the project. So you will see how all the programs kind of revolve around it. So this is the main patio, which is connected to the existing stairs. This is again the main patio that connects both the terrace with the ground floor. So as I was explaining in the project before, here there are also a few passive energy strategies. In this case, the patio also, it ensures adequate lighting and ventilation for the future working areas. So during the summer, the upper level is open in order to generate some cross ventilation, while in the winter is closed in order to create some reservoir of warm air. One of the requirements and the goals given by the brief was to achieve a net zero building. So we introduced a system of strategies like the ones that I just mentioned. Also geothermal energy, given the fact that the building that we had to excavate 20 or 30 meters down for the parking, and also a system of a natural wall Babylon that will have the capacity to recycle the rainwater and also at the same time to increase the humidity in the summer. Now, as we keep moving up in the building, we see the typical floor plan on the right, which is where you'll have the offices. Here, one of the main goals was to keep it as flexible as possible in order to allow for many potential distributions, because this was very important given the unknown identity of the future users. It was unclear if that space was going to be divided into 10, 2, 3, or 1. Even though there was one company that was the client and already bought the plot. So we organize the circulation in such a way that will somehow allow for possible divisions in the futures. This actually this will be the office space in which you can see the main facade on the right, and then on the left this main patio. And this is just a diagram in which you could divide the plan into many different parts for many potential companies that will work in that office space. That was achieved, as I said, by the strategy in circulation, also with the structure strategy. So basically, the structure was either in the perimeter of the patio or in the facade, keeping the rest of the space free of a structure. The structure was made out of metal and timber, as opposed to concrete, in order to reduce its load, and also, which consequently will also reduce the dimensions of the foundation. This is a sequence of the construction process. Is fairly complex given the nature and the elements that have to be conserved. So basically, in the first phase, it was all about stabilizing and protecting the structure that was going to be kept. Then the entire building was expected to be demolished. Then the foundation of the piles would be built. Then all the parking lots, and then the rest of the building going upwards. This is the last level in which we can see the terrace, which is this L shape, and then a gym, and everything was covered by this one continuous roof that also was an active element and had the capacity to collect both water and solar energy. As the patio, the roof did play a very strong role in the design, and we understood the roof as somehow a large polyhedral Cooper roof, and it was somehow treated as a third facade. We also wanted this roof to establish a connection with the 16th context, with the buildings that were built at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, by maintaining the existing inclination, by its geometry, and also by its color. Even though the facade, this third facade, the roof was this copper unifying element that had the capacity to give somehow to cover and to cover a very complex last floor in which you have the upper part of the stairs, you have the gym, you have the terrace, you have the patio, and so on. Even though it was a one continuous element, at the same time it had the capacity to given different materialities of metal sheets and mesh. It had the capacity to kind of give different answers to the conditions that were actually happening underneath. We could regulate the natural light. We could have terraces, like opaque areas, terraces underneath, open air spaces, and so on. Okay, and now this is the last project that I'm going to explain, very different from the previous one. As I was saying, in Spain, the other project in Spain, it was all about recycling existing structures. and the city was kind of looking inwards. In this case, in Santiago, where I'm going to explain a project, a new development of high density that somehow takes over an important part of the city. We did this project with Chilean partners, Izquierdo Lehmann Architects, and again, even though the site was in Chile in this time, part of the team was Spain, and others were also in Hong Kong. Well, this is the city of Santiago. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it actually has 7 million people, 1/3 of the population of the entire country of Chile. It has a ring, as you can see here, that kind of defines the boundaries of what's in and what's out of the city. And it's established a very strong connection. It has, not very far away from here, 60 miles on the left, you have the Pacific Ocean, and then 50 miles on the right, you have the Andes. So it has a very strong topographical condition. This project was done, this is the city center, this triangle that you see here. This was the site, which was in one of the main arteries of the city that crosses the city north-south, called Vicuña Maquena. So the invitation of this competition was a very interesting challenge. It was a challenge of urban densification in one of the greatest urban developments in this area. In this area in Santiago, they're densifying the city at a very rapid speed, and they're building dwellings and buildings with the high levels of density. In this case, we had to design 3,000 dwellings, which is around 10,000 people in a 3-hectare site. As I said, I mean, given the scale and the density, is a project that is very hard to see within Europe. So basically, the competition consisted in rethinking the project that the real estate company had already done. What you see here is the project that the real estate company had designed in this plot that, again, is facing this main street I was explaining before, that it crosses the city north-south, Vicuña, which is this one too here, called Vicuña Maquena. It has around 100-meter wide, which is 300 feet, and then around 1,000 feet on the other direction. And at the back, you have the train tracks. So basically, yeah, we have to kind of maintain somehow the requirements of density, number of dwellings, same site, of course, but we have to rethink the proposal that was already designed by the real estate company. This is the project that they did, and it has certain obvious problems. No, privacy. Like there are some serious questions about what happens with the person who lives on the 3rd, 4th floor. You have issues of privacy, natural illumination, ventilation, views. You have endless corridors that go throughout the entire spine. There's not really a relationship with its context. The whole ground floor is unused because it's a huge parking and so on. That actually is not very. That project wasn't very far. What is locally known as vertical ghettos that has been built in recent years in that area in Santiago. So this is not the project that we have to rethink. This is not the one that has been built very close by. But all these high dense buildings with certain problems have created certain controversy within the public opinion in Chile. No, they don't establish any connection with the context. There's all these problems of privacy, illumination, and so on. So there's all this in the last few years. There has been all this debate about how how if those vertical ghettos, as they call it, if we should establish some kind of regulation towards it, or how we can densify in the city. So those are just news of like how news from the paper. 1 week living in a vertical ghetto. Municipality of Santiago stops a project because it was considered a vertical ghetto. So, I mean, thanks to all this controversy and debate that happened a few years ago, the real estate company also realized that they had to kind of change their approach and rethink a new proposal for the project. So, yeah, I mean, when we started working on this project, there are many obvious questions that we have. I mean, how shall we densify? How can actually we provide any public space given the stream density? Is it possible to establish any connection with the site or not? So this is the project that you already know, and this is our proposal. That again, you have to keep the requirements of area, number of dwellings, and so on. So here, what we propose is first we start the proposal with this kind of bar that it creates this kind of front of the main street. It has 10 floors at the city as the city center of Santiago. So it already start establishing a connection with its context, and also allows to control and contain the scale, and allow to establish a relationship with the citizens. The towers that you see at the back, they're pushed back, they're resist in order to reduce the impact on the public space. So the whole project is the height of the towers. It goes from 27 to 34 stories, and is raised in order to reduce the density on the ground floor and on the intermediate levels, and also improve the views to the Andes and to the hills, to improve the privacy, and somehow to create this kind of big public space on the ground floor to establish that can permeate into the main avenue. So basically, yeah, here also I think this is also a good example in which we try to reclaim these public spaces or a space of interaction between people. How? So by increasing the height of the towers and freeing the ground floor by creating a system of pockets of public spaces within pockets of public spaces in the main street, and also by somehow creating this new front of this main street, Vicuña Maquena, throughout a system of blocks that will allow to establish a connection between the pedestrians and the tower and the buildings. So as I said, there are better views, and there's more privacy, as you will see later in the floor plans, and the project complies within the regulations given by the municipality. So again, the project aims to lift itself and to allow to establish a connection between the public space and the street, and also given the scale and the dimension of the project, it was broken up into 6 phases. The 3,000 dwellings wouldn't be sold at once, so it will be broken into 6 different phases. So the system of towers and blocks was actually designed in such a way that this division can potentially be done in the future, and it will create small communities for each of the phases. So one of the main goals of the project was to create this park, kind of free the ground floor, and to create a public space that will connect with the main street. We also these structures that you see here. The site is in a industrial area, so we try to keep some of those in industrial heritage in order to somehow maintain certain identity and character of the proposal, and also to understand that we need to build cities with the existing context, with the existing element. We understand that the cities do get built by an addition of by an addition and superposition of layers. So this would be the plan of the proposal, of course, and of the park. That has vegetation that were used mainly as a kind of buffer, as a acoustic protection, both from the train tracks at the back and also for the main street. This would be one of the images in which you're facing the main street. You can see the main bar, and also you can see the tower at the back. So as I was mentioning before, the bar aims to set back in some areas to create a system of public spaces. So the bar is set back in order to, and also it has a system of zigzags in order to create this system of pockets, and also in order to allow and maintain the existing vegetations, which are all these Great Plain trees. On the ground floor, you have some commercial space in order to establish a connection with and animate the ground floor. And then this bar also will have all the dwellings facing north, which is the base orientation in the south hemisphere. And also all of them will have small balconies in order to allow to somehow establish some kind of visual and interaction with the public space. The towers, as I was mentioning before, they go from 26 to 34 stories, and they aim to provide views of the Andes. Now, this image is part of the imagination of the residents of Santiago, and it's always there. It's always a reference. It helps also even to get orientated. So these towers aim to establish a connection with these elements and make sure that 80% of the residents of the project will have access to these views. The towers, they have this circular perimeter, but inside this they have this rectangular grid. This is somehow interesting because it allows us to maintain and ensure the privacy between towers. So even though this person is living here, it has this view, and this person who is living here is this view. So we try as much as we could to avoid any kind of visual intersection and kind of maintain certain privacy for the users. The terraces are the ones that have the capacity to absorb the intersection of both geometries, the circular and the rectangular. And then the towers are thought as the structural system of the towers is thought as a system of perimetral columns and then walls in the core. That was interesting because that will allow us to free the rest of the floor plan and have very thin dry walls, and in that sense optimize the floor plan. Yeah, so basically, as I was explaining throughout all the projects, we see every project as an opportunity to recover the relationship within the public space. Somehow, create moments of socialization, create moments of interaction. Given nowadays, given the current technologies, and also given the process of privatization, we think that somehow not only the public spaces, but the space of interaction are under threat. So we try with our project to give answer to those challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you you so much for the lecture. Great talk, and it's as I said in the introduction, it's amazing that you guys are winning these competitions at this scale so early after you opened your office. So I feel like the first question to me would be, which maybe a lot of the students have, how do you do this? And just to break the ice, and then maybe open it to the others in the audience that have some questions. So can you talk about the process of your office? How do you pick a competition? How do you decide what to do? And how many competitions are you actually doing to win those? Are those only the 4 competitions you did, or are you doing 50 and then 4 you win or something like that? So I think that would be interesting for the students to hear. So
we, as Mark was pointing out, we do many competitions because that's kind of the way we have access to commissions. If we would have access to a very rich client that would want to get one of those towers built, maybe we wouldn't do as many competitions. We do many, but we still think they're somehow very interesting because they serve as a platform for us to somehow to kind of put different ideas on the table, to be speculative, to try some concepts that otherwise with the direct conversation with the client would be very difficult. So then that's the way right now we have access to, because we're also, as Mark was saying, we're a pretty young office, we have access to projects. And we do many. I have shown 4. We have won 3 of them, and another one, the one in Madrid, was a second prize. But out of these 4, maybe we have done like 10 or 12. But we do. Since this is the only way that we have right now in order to access projects, we take them very seriously. And every time we do a competition, we don't analyze one. We analyze 30 of them. We put together a very complex Excel sheet in which we analyze the location to see, how far it actually is from one of our bases. Is actually the competition going to get built or not? Because many competitions are used as a political tool in order to kind of get ideas on the table or to get interest on things, but they are not thought to be built. We only do competitions that we have certainty that they will get built. We look also, of course, at the jury, we look at the honorarium, because sometimes you win competitions, and if you don't look at those things, will potentially turn into kind of a big challenge more than a good news. So yeah, that's, competitions for us is, at least at the beginning and over the last 2 years are like somehow the way we work.
Hi, thank you for coming and showing us all this. A follow-up question to this. What is the process of design that you follow in the office? Not the practical part, but the process of thinking. And you arrive at a solution. How is the physical models playing a role in your studies and drafting, drawing, computers, etc., etc.? How do you guys do it?
Right. So sometimes we get this question: is like, okay, what's your strategy? How do you approach a project? And we say, we don't have any. Like we don't have. We take every single project one opportunity, and we give a specific answer to every specific project. So we don't really have a way of kind of tackling projects. It's true that as you develop more and more projects, there are like ideas that are on top of the table, and sometimes you reuse them or kind of try to see how they can potentially be applied. But we don't have some kind of one main strategy that kind of defines our practice, let's say. We do. So I think for us it's interesting to test the projects in many ways. So projects, in order to be interesting, they have to be tested in plans, section, through models, in 3D. Unless like a project is kind of tested throughout all these different systems, it will be uncooked.
I was actually taken by your plans quite a bit, and we taught our students to draw plans actually still in this school, which I think is great. And a lot of these plans are super smart, and they look very simple, But I think like throughout the lecture there were like some really interesting plans, and I think this one's it's quite cool too. So, any more questions? I know you have a question. That's great. There you go.
You mentioned a book called Architecture Without Architects. I haven't read it, so maybe it's not as obvious to me, but how does it relate to any of your programs?
Yes, this book called Architecture Without Architects by Rudolsky. In some cases, I was showing this example of the chimneys in Syria, and I mean we believe that there is a lot of knowledge out there that has been used back in the day. So in many cases we look at the books and other references in order to see how we can reappropriate those ideas and implement them within a contemporary context. So in that particular case, those chimneys are a system of chimneys that exist in Syria, and that they have the capacity to kind of by suction create natural ventilation and kind of cool down the spaces. And that's one of the strategies that it was applied in that project, and it's also not only applied, but also somehow define the formological aspect and dimension of that project. That was also this system of towers.
Thank you, Jose, for your lecture. I like the fact that you work in a very global arena. And I want to ask you, how do you address this aspect of context in your work, whether it's Spain or Chile or Romania? They're very different cultures, and maybe there's a commonality, and maybe you can share your approach with us.
So yeah, I mean, working globally, it has certain advantages, at least that's the way we think. One of them is somehow it allows us to be somehow detached from a place and kind of give a more objective proposal, and kind of this distance to the side. It allows us to look at the context in a very different way. But so this allows us to kind of have the first kind of approaches and passes of the project. But we also believe that somehow our projects are also very site specific and give answer to the context.
Thank you, Jose. I wanted to know a little bit more about your collaboration with the others while you are far away, especially in the conceptual phase. How does that work? How do you start a project when each one of you is in a different place?
Right. So, yeah, when we are very apart from each other, it has certain advantages, especially within the production mode, because the files are always hot. There's always someone working on the files, given the time change. It might be a little bit more challenging at the beginning, as you were mentioning. So basically, I mean, we're three partners, but for us it's very important that all the projects that come out of the office are all like Practica projects, and even though we do have like team leaders, and like each person is in charge of one project, kind of the main design decisions are taken in groups as a team. And we basically, I mean, we work as you do here in the school. Basically, one of us is in charge of the project, and that person is putting together presentations, and we do pin-ups, and then the rest kind of give like critique and comment on that project. Right, and when we're very far away from each other, we use Skype, or we're kind of for us it doesn't pose a big challenge, since we're also used to that system through the online classes at the AAU. So yeah, I don't see that being a challenge. Maybe the time zones a little bit, because it's not always the best time for everyone, but.
I'm trying to find an online question. I have the iPad here with all the online students, and I think we have 15 people watching right now. I think there were actually some more, some already logged out. Just give me 1 second to read over this. Somebody says, great lecture, man. Not really in-depth questions. Oh. Do you found a question there? Yes. Oh, I can. Oh. Yeah, that's kind of a remark in a way.
Yeah, that's a very interesting project, and it has certain a couple of things in common with the project that we are doing in Romania, and that project also was some kind of infrastructure that was converted into a big public space. So as an urban gesture and as an urban strategy, we also have been looking at it because it's also a very important reference for us.
Jose, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the lecture. I hope that you students got a lot out of it. I think they did. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming here.